as you know, well, you might not know, budgets are the annual, if you like, announcement of how the government thinks the finances are going to go and what it's going to spend money on. They used to be a massive thing in New Zealand. And the budget would determine kind of the mood, the economic well-being of the nation for the next year. They'd often involve increases in tobacco taxes and fuel taxes and other things. And they were considered very, very sensitive budgets back in the day before electronics and global markets. So budget secrets were held tightly. It's not quite like that anymore. All the good stuff that's going to be in the budget, the government leaks. It leaked on Monday, $100 million in spending on maths tuition in our schools. But we still go through the charade of, on the day of the budget, journalists are put in a lockup, in a cocoon of silence, where they're given all, and I'll be honest, what I find incredibly boring facts and figures of the budget, and then for about 3 or 4 hours, I think you're in the lockup, and then you can talk about it. I've covered a few budgets. I've been to a few lockups. I've certainly covered live coverage of the budget several times, more times than I care to remember, for outfits like Radio New Zealand. But in a departure from lockup protocols of the past this year, the government is excluding a number of third parties who are not strictly news organisations. Amongst them all the unions, and the Council of Trade Unions are absolutely saying, oh, this is unfair, we can't go into the lockup, and then come up with a whole lot of commie crap about why we hate the government. But also caught up in that new criteria outfits like the business lobby group Business New Zealand, and indeed the lobby group, or the activist group, the Taxpayers Union. Joining us now from the Taxpayers Union, I guess to say this is dreadfully unfair, is Jordan Williams. How are you, Jordan?
Good morning, Sean.
All right. When did you first find that? Well, how long has the Taxpayers Union been going to the budget lockup?
Every year. I've been to every budget in the last decade since the Taxpayers Union started.
So you are, I think under those circumstances, there is a tradition here, there is a convention that a group like yours does have access, and you've never in that time breached the confidentiality of the budget lockup?
No, of course not. I mean, the Taxpayers Union, you know, we'll sometimes be known for sort of tongue-in-cheek sort of stance, but we're not storm the stage type people.
No,
and let's be
not
frank,
like your Greenpeace.
the budget. No, gosh, no. I mean, to be frank, the budget is probably the most serious work of the year that the Taxpayers Union does. You know, we put a lot of time and effort and energy and resources. I generally, as much as Treasury will let us take people, I take as much of my economic team down the road as and go into that lockup as possible. My team have even picked up literally mistakes in the budget that have subsequently been corrected by Treasury. And this sort of bizarre change in policy marks quite a significant departure. I was talking to
When did you first hear about it? How were you told that you were not welcome?
We were supposed to be told last week, because initially Treasury had said they were going to come back to all the people they had invited to apply for spots, including us, that they were going to come back to us by last Wednesday. Wednesday night, I know various organisations emailed them and said, hey, what's going on? And they didn't have any reason for the delay. And then they told everyone towards the end of the post-cab stand-up. So it was sort of 4:30, 5 o'clock Monday, the emails were going out. And basically it appears that if you're on the government payroll, or if you're a media organisation, although I know not all media organisations have got in, they've blocked one of the more sort of contrarian media organisations, the centrists.
Not really a media organisation, Jordan. They're kind of cookers.
They're breaking this excellent waste story in Auckland. And, I mean, that's the sort of... I mean, they're certainly not...
They're Jim Grennan's outfit, aren't they, the centrist?
No. It's this one that has Jim Grennan, the Herald.
Yeah.
owner behind. So, but I mean, the Council of Trade Unions would say the Taxpayers Union are cookers. Most of the Taxpayers Union would consider
But
that
they're being excluded too, Jordan. It's not like it's just righties.
Well, that's the issue, though. So it appears what's happened is because of a brouhaha about a year ago between the finance minister and the economist, Craig Rennie at the Council of Trade Unions, that this has sort of led to all these organisations, including Business New Zealand and the like, being banned. And I mean, you look at, I understand that the Business New Zealand have been intending these lockouts for more than 25 years. To a week before the budget, or 10 days before the budget, to say to all these groups, no, you're not welcome, is pretty extraordinary. And I can talk about our experience and the way that for our 200,000 subscribers, that they expect us to get the inside juice to them pretty quickly. But let's focus at Business New Zealand. So they, among their affiliates and stuff, they have an email list, I understand, of about 70,000 business owners. I understand that the moment the embargo is lifted, their sort of business hotlines and helplines, etc., start getting calls about all the budget measures and things like that, and questions from their members and business owners. Well, that's now going to be damn near impossible. And we're actually going to see a situation, because I of course, this isn't like Australia. It still works like this, that you have the budget in the evening and they put up taxes that night, or
is it next Tuesday?
It's next Thursday.
It doesn't
quite work
Thursday,
like
yeah.
that, because we're a little bit more sort of transparent in sort of the policy generally around the fiscal stuff. It takes a bit longer. But there still often is urgent legislation or budget legislation that gets passed that day, that night. Yeah. And we're going to be in a situation where, like us or not, the major sector groups, like Business New Zealand, like the Taxpayers Union, like the Council of Trade Unions, are probably not even going to have been able to have read the legislation that is being passed in the Parliament under urgency because of this block by...
Well, you'd just be like any other citizen, Jordan.
Well, what you're concentrating, and I know that
look, I'm just saying, because we'll move on, but I'm just saying you don't have any special rights. You're just a group of people.
That's true, of course. And I would argue that if you have a legitimate interest, that I've put to you, that
everyone's got a legitimate interest. Your interest's no more or less legitimate than the average Joe Blow on the street.
But the average Joe Blow on the street often joins one or more of these organisations,
and often they don't.
That, to be frank, the media often rely on for the interpretation and the insights that the politicians that are trying to spoon feed the Mikey Shermans of the world on how to report the budget do not want you to know, and that is that.
And I must say, Jordan. In the past here, in the last 3 years of the platform, we've often come to you for comment on the budget because you bring a perspective to it that we wouldn't get otherwise. So I hear what you...
And the same applies to the other side. To, an old bedfellow.
Yeah, but the CTU they don't talk to the platform. I don't care what happens to them.
But you take my point, though.
Yeah, I do. And look, the more important thing to me is you appear to have, in common law, you have had a right that you have exercised and you've come to expect. As a group of people, as a business, the Taxpayers Union's had a right. It has been taken from you at very, very short notice with no right of redress or appeal. And I'm wondering if you couldn't get an injunction against the removal of your accreditation to the budget lock-up next Thursday if there isn't, because you've been treated unreasonably, a legal redress here for you.
Well, Treasury have bottled it. I've got very conflicting information as to whether this is a ministerial decision or a Treasury decision. The Minister's office is blaming Treasury, although they blamed, when they banned people from the half-year fiscal update, the Minister's office blamed Treasury, but the subsequent OIAs showed it was actually driven by the Minister. I've got a Treasury official on record telling one of the people banned that they couldn't be guaranteed a place because the decision was jointly made with the minister. I've also got someone willing to give me an affidavit because it was actually the assumption we were working on, of Treasury being very clear that before there was a change in policy as it related to all these organisations in relation to the budget lockup, that there would be consultation. There hasn't been consultation. I suspect that would be the ground if we were to legally challenge it.
But are you considering a legal challenge prior to the budget
absolutely.
next Thursday?
Look, we are a transparency and accountability organisation, and next Thursday is arguably the most important day of this government in terms of whether, the long-term fiscal prosperity or the sustainability of our government books. It doesn't get much more important. I think if not the Taxpayers Union, there will be others that, especially when you look at some of the people they do let in. I mean, they're basically letting bloggers in.
Hang on, just while you're there,
uneven.
tell me the people that you think are getting in that shouldn't be able to or have got less right than you.